Berlin, February 1944. The cracked mirror on the wall reflected a face he barely recognized. A strong jawline, neatly pressed collar, and on the tab, twin lightning bolts of the SS. The perfect Nazi officer stared back. His gloved hand raised a pistol, pressing the cold barrel against his temple. Before we dive into this forgotten story of survival and silent sacrifice, remember, if you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths of history, give this video a like and consider subscribing for more gripping tales from the shadows of time. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. He closed his eyes and for a moment the image in the mirror vanished. London returned. His sister's laugh. Rain on cobblestones. The smell of tea and damp paper. A language he hadn't spoken freely in 2 years. The knock at the door was sharp, commanding. He lowered the pistol, slid it into his holster, adjusted the black officer's cap. When he stepped into the corridor, he was no longer Edward Hale of MI6, nor Daniel Carter, nor any trace of the man he once was. He was Oberleutnant Klaus Richter, Dietrich Hartmann, names that belonged to ghosts. What no one in that building knew was that tonight, he would commit treason against the Reich for the last time. 2.5 years earlier, in London, the war had been at its darkest point. The city bore the wounds of the Blitz, buildings gutted like carcasses, streets layered in brick dust and ash. The air still carried the faint bitterness of smoke months after the last bombing raid. In the dimly lit MI6 briefing room, Edward sat across from a senior officer. Daniel Carter sat 2 chairs away. They had never spoken before, but both had been summoned for the same purpose. The officer's voice was low and deliberate. You will go to Berlin. You will live among them, eat with them, obey their orders. Your cover will be airtight, Austrian-born officers in the German army. You will send us everything you learn, no matter the cost. And whatever you do, his gaze moved between them. Don't get lost in the role. Both men were chosen for the same reasons: fluent German, unshakable nerve, and the ability to vanish into a part so deeply that no one could see the seams. They were given forged papers, identities that belonged to men who no longer lived. The real Klaus Richter and Dietrich Hartmann had died quietly, one in a car crash, the other in a factory accident. MI6 buried the truth and resurrected them as weapons. The training was brutal. They were drilled in military protocol until the salutes came reflexively, in Nazi rhetoric until they could speak it without hesitation, in mannerisms so precise that even the suspicion of doubt was erased from their bearing. The night before departure, Edward's handler gave the final warning. You break character, you die. And worse, you take everyone with you. Berlin was not the city either man expected. Beneath its military precision was a constant low hum of dread. The cold was sharper there, the nights quieter. Edward, now Richter, was stationed in an administrative office near Wilhelmstrasse, managing logistics that gave him access to troop movements and supply shortages. Daniel, now Hartmann, served in a combat unit but was soon promoted into operations that brought him into contact with both the Gestapo and Wehrmacht command. At first, the work was mechanical. Memorize documents, relay troop deployments, survive. The first messages back to London were cautious. Short lists of schedules and maps tapped out on hidden transmitters, the clicks of Morse code swallowed by the hum of static. But Berlin had its way of drawing men in. Edward's transmissions grew bolder, classified orders smuggled in coat linings, blueprints memorized, photographs taken in moments of reckless precision. Daniel's life moved faster, raids on resistance cells, briefings with high-ranking officers, his uniform growing heavier with medals and trust. And then the first crack appeared. For Daniel, it came during a raid on a Polish hideout. A captured boy, maybe 16, was shoved to his knees in the snow. Daniel's commanding officer shoved a Luger into his hand. "Do it, Hartmann! Prove your loyalty!" The boy's eyes were wide but defiant. Daniel's finger hovered on the trigger. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he told himself to aim high, miss. But the shout rang out and the boy fell. And in that instant, Dietrich Hartmann wasn't just a name on paper. He was real. Edward's crack came more slowly, like water wearing away stone. At first, Nazi propaganda was just noise, something to nod along to. But weeks turned into months. He laughed at their jokes, saluted their victories, defended policy in casual conversation just to maintain the mask. And one night, lying awake, he realized the mask was no longer something he wore. It was something he was becoming. Then came the woman. Edward saw her first, a brief glimpse in a cafe on Friedrichstrasse. Anna Weiss, a courier for the Berlin resistance, slipped him a ration ticket with a coded message scrawled in the margin. He tried to avoid her. MI6 had been clear, no entanglements. But Anna was relentless. Their street corner meetings grew into tense exchanges of stolen intelligence. "You've been here too long, Edward," she said one night in the dim back room of a tailor's shop. "You're starting to look like one of them." The words cut deeper than he expected. For Daniel, there was no Anna. But there was a British spy, captured, beaten, dragged to a courtyard for execution. Daniel was ordered to oversee it. The prisoner lifted his head, blood running into his eyes, and recognition flickered. "Daniel," he whispered. "I don't know what you're talking about," Hartmann said. And yet his hand shook as he raised the pistol. The nightmares came for them both after that. For Edward, it was Anna's voice mixed with the smell of burning paper. For Daniel, it was the boy in the snow and the spy in the courtyard, standing side by side, silent, watching. Then came the turning point. Late in 1943, Edward intercepted plans for the Atlantic Wall, the massive coastal defenses meant to crush the coming Allied invasion. It was the kind of intelligence that could change the war. But before he could send it, Anna was captured. Her execution was set within days. Daniel's moment came with a different kind of message. Extraction in 48 hours. Burn your identity. Return immediately. For Edward, the choice was instant. MI6 would say the mission came first, but he couldn't leave her to die. One snow-laden night, wearing the uniform that had become his skin, he walked into the detention center with forged transfer orders. His German was flawless, his authority unquestionable. They reached a side street before the alarm howled. Soldiers gave chase. Edward fired into the air, shouting orders in perfect German, sowing just enough chaos to vanish with her into the maze of alleys. By dawn, Anna was hidden with resistance allies. But Edward's face was now known to men who would hunt him until the end of the war. For Daniel, the message of extraction felt like a noose and a key all at once. Return? To what? A London he hadn't seen in years? A man he wasn't sure existed anymore? He looked at his uniform, at the medals that weren't his, and realized he wasn't certain which side he belonged to. On Edward's last night in Berlin, the Atlantic Wall plans lay across his desk. He tapped out his final message to London: "The wall is hollow. Strike in the west." As the last signal pulsed into the ether, the boots came again, louder, closer. He burned the papers, the flames painting his shadow across the wall. The Luger slid into his belt as he turned toward the door. In some versions of the story, Daniel and Edward never met again, two ghosts moving through the same city under different names. Others whisper they crossed paths once in a smoke-filled tavern on a side street near Alexanderplatz, speaking only in coded fragments, both knowing neither could trust the other completely. The records tell different endings. Nazi files list Oberlin and Klaus Richter as missing, Presumed dead, February 1944. Wehrmacht rolls show Dietrich Hartmann vanished the same winter, his name struck through in red ink. MI6 has no record of Edward Hale or Daniel Carter's return. Some say Edward was captured and executed, Anna slipping away into the war's chaos. Some believe Daniel fled into the east, disappearing into the ruins as the Reich crumbled. And a few claim they both stayed, still wearing the uniforms, not entirely certain if the men they had become were enemies or something far worse, men who no longer remembered which side they'd started on. Somewhere, in the endless night of that war, the sound of boots still echoes in an empty hallway, and two shadows, one with a Luger, one with an iron cross, wait at a crossroads neither ever truly left.